To young people watching or listening, I have a very personal message for you. Say yes to your life. And when it comes to drugs and alcohol, just say no.
In 1982, Nancy Reagan's famous words, "just say no," were popularized from a speech she gave as President Reagan waged his war on drugs. Nancy was the public face of the Just Say No campaign, making appearances to garner public support for the tough anti-crime and drug policies that later proved to be ineffective. Although the Reagan administration presented the war on drugs as a way to save kids' lives, it became a vehicle that destroyed many lives through mass incarceration. While drug use prevention initiatives such as DARE failed miserably to deter children from using drugs, policies such as zero tolerance and drug-free school zones managed to criminalize young people, especially African Americans. In 1980, nearly 15% of all juvenile drug arrests were black youth. By 1990, black youth constituted nearly 49% of all juvenile drug arrests. Just 8 years after Nancy Reagan's now infamous speech. Over that same time period, the black population in the United States grew from 11.7% to just over 12%. That's an increase of only 3.4% over the decade. The number of black youth that were arrested in that same period grew by over 236.5%. This disparity remains despite the fact that a number of studies have shown that black and white youth participate in drug use and sale at just about the same rate. In 1986, 4 years after Nancy Reagan's Just Say No speech, Congress passed the Drug-Free Schools and Communities Act, mandating a zero-tolerance policy for drugs or alcohol on public school grounds. After the law was passed, the incarceration rate of juveniles continued to balloon. From 1986 to 1996, white juveniles sent to prison for drug offenses doubled. However, young blacks incarcerated for drug offenses grew sixfold. By 1996, black youth were 3 times more likely than white juveniles to get sent to prison for drug offenses. Along with the dramatically increased incarceration rates, school suspensions also increased. Fewer than 4% of students were being kept out of school as a punishment in the 1970s. Suspension rates for all students has nearly doubled from 3.7% in 1973 to 6.9% in 2006. With the advent of zero tolerance, black children experienced a 150% increase in suspension rates, from 6% in 1973 to 15% in 2006. Meanwhile, the white suspension rate gained less than 50% increase, growing from 3.1% to 4.8%. The suspension rate gap between blacks and whites has grown from 3 percentage points in the 70s to over 10 percentage points in the 2000s. In other words, black students are now over 3 times more likely to be suspended than white students. President Reagan's failed policy to sway children away from drug addiction became a pathway to suspension and ultimately prison. Nationally, the United States is incarcerating youth at a rate that is almost 5 times greater than that of South Africa, the country with the next highest youth incarceration rate. The United States youth incarceration rate is 7 times greater than that of the UK, 14 times greater than Germany's, and over 3,000 times greater than Japan's. Over 2 decades after Nancy's Just Say No declaration, African Americans continue to feel the disproportionate ramifications of the war on drugs, representing 26% of juvenile arrests, 44% of youth who are detained, 46% of youth who are judicially waived to criminal court, and 58% of the youth admitted to state prisons. So the next time we hear the war on drugs, we'll remember that there's a school to prison pipeline, and we'll say,
just say no.